So I'm here with McCallion, somebody who knows all about real estate portals and all about AI in the context of real estate. Mal, we were just talking before. There's one statistic that stands out from the Portal Standards 2025 report, and this: only 1% of real estate portals have any kind of like true AI powered search in the year 2025. What's your reaction to that?
It's astonishing, right? Absolutely astonishing. And, obviously we'll get into it, but there's got to be some really, really serious reasons why that it is that minuscule. Even if you go out to general search, you see like Google's got, its AI overviews up there now. Apparently it's losing something like 34% of its organic traffic or websites in the organic spaces. Search engine optimization is losing out. So everybody's going after this because this is where consumers are. This is where they're going. I remember way back when I was lucky enough to be part of the team that set up Planication back in 2000, helped set up Zoopla in 2008. And, we were always kind of focused on, right, the consumer, how do you end up where the consumer is, right? Back in 2000, consumers were just getting used to the internet, was starting these kind of like big searches, and we built filters and all that sort of stuff. Then it was mobile was very much the thing in 2008 or so. So it's kind of like, right, how can we build out for this platform? And to see now that these portals are willfully, because it can't be anything else in my view, willfully restricting consumer access to a technology that's, it's reasonably mature, right? It's been around for a couple of years now, 2, 3 years. And all of them, you look at, say, that Rightmove has been big on how many AI engineers and specialists they've been recruiting. So they've got the talent kind of behind the scenes now. They've certainly got the same knowledge as the rest of us. And, as I've built an AI business over the last couple of years, focused on estate agency and lettings agency and so on in the UK and elsewhere. So we've been able to produce some amazing things just using this technology. So it is beyond um, uh, almost beyond it's beyond belief that this is accidental, or that there are restrictions here that are in play for this particular type of business, a property portal, that are not in play for the likes of Google or us at Model Prop or anybody else. So yeah, my reaction is, if I could just do open-mouthed aghastness, then it's probably that.
Okay, we'll get into the possible reasons why the uptake has been quite relatively small shortly. But you mentioned there you were one of the founding members of the Prime Location Portal. You've been involved. I think you were at Zoopla. You said so you've worked on the portal side of this, but now or for the last however many years you've worked kind of on the agent side of it. And Model Prop, your company, is in the business of helping agents in the UK to adopt AI, right? So the question is, if the portal uptake on this is so small, what's the agent uptake on these kind of things? I imagine you don't have a percentage because it's not as easy to quantify these things when you're talking about thousands and thousands of agents. But what is your impression of the uptake on the other side of the fence?
Yeah, really good question. So I think so. There's a couple of layers of this, I think is probably fair to say. So over here in the UK, we've got, broadly speaking, about 10,000 agent companies with about 20,000 branches is the easiest way of thinking about it. But obviously it's a very long tail. So something like 8,000 of those 10,000 are single branch firms or just one-off operations. So within that cohort, it's kind of the mix you'd expect. There are some amazing trailblazing early adopters who are basically, crowbarred in absolutely everything because they see how cost effective it is and how much it can supercharge their activities. For whether it's marketing, whether it's ops, productivity, whatever. So they are kind of supercharging that cohort. So then there are obviously the laggards and the people that are never ever going to do it and are still using fax machines and stuff like that. And that's they're where they are, and that's great. I think in the larger agencies is really interesting as well. So that there is. It seems to be that the further up you go, so we've got like some giants like Connells, who own the likes of Hamptons and John D. Wood and others. We've got the property franchise group that owns a huge amount of thousands of brands, thousands of branches as well. So those big guys, they've got a kind of inverse problem, which is about kind of trust and about what happens if these things go wrong and stuff like that. So as you kind of go down the long tail curve, um, there are a lot of great agents as well in the regional side of things, so 5 to 30 branches, and those guys seem to be the ones that are probably utilizing it the most with the most serious intent, in terms of they see themselves as market leaders, and rightly so. They are experimenting with different types of AI. So, for example, they can have internal data AIs that only serve their teams, and on their mobile phones, their teams can click on a tile on their phones, takes them through to all of their internal, the whole of their intranet is on there, the whole of their employee handbook, the whole of everything. So instead of having to go and log into the intranet and do all that sort of stuff, they can just ask natural language questions. And that's across their entire network of staff. So that saves them a huge amount of time, staff asking each other dumb questions, all that sort of stuff. So that there is a lot of adoption in different ways. There's virtual staging, there are AI videos, there's lots going on, and agents are choosing their kind of their adventure, really, in terms of what they're looking to adopt.
Okay. Are there many um, agent websites in the UK that have specifically kind of free text or free voice AI search, like what we've been studying in this report? I know that there are a few in the US, for example. Are there many in the UK that have gone down that path yet, or is that maybe the next kind of big leap for some of these companies?
So, in terms of having it replacing their search bar, so replacing the filters, there are very few, like the minuscule few. But there are many who have now an AI assistant sitting down in the corner that has replaced the old live chat. So, again, whereas you had to send over some FAQs, and somebody, whichever human was going to answer it, needed to have access to all this information in front of them, or would have to pass it on anyway. Obviously, AI assistants can do that off the bat. They clearly, can do that 24/7 as well. There are other benefits in there too, where you can take a picture if you're a tenant of I don't know, of a leaking tap, and upload it into the AI assistant, and it will tell you what to do about it. Also, you can upload boiler manuals, and it will recommend how to fix your boiler and stuff like that. So there is a huge versatility in those AI assistants that also have natural language search baked in, and it knows, and it updates every single day on all the properties that are on the website. So you can go and chat and ask it for a sea view near a train station with a parking space, whatever those features are.
Okay, I want to focus on specifically on AI search here. So let's just play out a scenario. Let's say that a real estate portal adopts full AI search and they get rid of their traditional location first box that we've all come to know and love over the last 25 years. What would be the advantages of doing that? Because from a business model perspective, it doesn't really seem that there's going to be any kind of extra revenue or anything like that. And what conversely might be the advantages or disadvantages for let's say a big agency website doing the same thing? Because it's not particularly obvious what the kind of revenue, if there's a revenue advantage here. Is it just moving with the times, or is there something a bit more profound, like when it comes to the bottom line here?
Yeah. So I think, as with all of these great businesses, and I've been around since the time print moved across to the internet. Essentially, the big thing is consumer. So how are consumers looking at these transitions, these big kind of paradigm technology shifts? It took a while for digital to steal all of the traffic and all the revenue from print. Now, what the portals are looking at right now is essentially, in some ways, a sort of existential crisis for some of them, right? That there is this whole new way of finding stuff out. So I can go and talk to ChatGPT on its advanced voice mode and ask it questions about, what's the best pizza shop locally, or where should I go on holiday if I like this, and it will give me answers, and it will give me really, really good answers, and correct answers. So the consumer is going to start to wonder why they can't do that on property. Now, for the larger ones, for the, let's call them dominant portals. So in each and every market in the world, there is like a dominant portal. And for the dominant portals, the motivation to change things is probably relatively slim at this point, particularly if you are like Rightmove, getting margins of 70+%. However, if consumer behavior switches as it has done with generic search, so again, going back to the 34% kind of drop through to from Google through to organic search results, then what you are running the risk of, if you do not change your way of searching or your ability to search via natural language search on your site, then you are telling consumers to go somewhere else and find that capacity, that capability. And that capability may be that you start to find it from, you find it on ChatGPT or whatever your personal AI assistant or large language model preference is. You could use Google Gemini, you could use, Claude, Anthropic's Claude. So you're starting to get the consumer further away from you as a brand. So I think if you're looking for motivations of why they should be doing it or why they might be interested in doing it, it is so that the consumer continues to see the brand as a desirable place to go, rather than knowing that I can't find a sea view apartment with a parking space 15 minutes away from a train station on Rightmove. I just can't. So I have to go to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will then go and check Rightmove, and it will also check On the Market, and it will check Zoopla, and it will check Henry Adams estate agents down on the south coast, and it will check Bailey's and all these others. So I think that to me is perhaps the risk, why they might consider that this is a good option. But as I think we'll probably talk about, there are many reasons for them not to as well.
Okay, we'll get to the reasons in a minute because we could fill another hour with the reasons. But I want to talk about like how easy or not easy this would be to implement. So we're talking about, okay, only 1% of real estate portals around the world have true AI search. There's actually a few more of them that I didn't include in that 1%, simply because they've tried to build something and in my opinion, it hasn't worked. Like it's just not good enough to be included as an AI search. And I think having looked at some of these, it looks like the data that they have, the taxonomies that they do and don't have are not rich enough to actually build an AI search. So if you put in, I want a south facing garden, or I want a sea view, or I want a house within 20 minutes of the train station, those are things that as a consumer, as a house hunter, I absolutely expect my AI, box on a portal to be able to match correctly. Now, in the portal's favor here, perhaps a little bit of devil's advocate, is some of these parameters that a consumer might expect to be able to search with an AI search, are they just too difficult for now to actually be able to get the data, put them into a taxonomy and tag all their listings? Are we perhaps expecting, so the technology has obviously been there for a few years to actually build the AI search and have it quickly search the listings, but is it perhaps a question of actually the data around some of these listings isn't rich enough yet?
So I would, so the data that is coming in from agents at this point, perhaps may be missing some things, and there is an argument, but I'm going to then argue quite strongly against that. Now, Zillow obviously is kind of the biggest that they have introduced. I think they're in the 1%, right? That have
So they're
introduced.
actually not, and I'll tell you why. So their AI search at the moment, or when I looked back in January, was only available on their mobile app, which in my eyes doesn't count.
Fair, all right, fair. So yes, but they are moving towards it, and
Yeah.
I champion that and
But they're
applaud.
they're kind of the exception because they've got all that rich MLS data. Yeah, the US is this exception over here that's kind of completely different.
Yeah, and so I think that they've got the the volume then. Whether the actual granular per property data is any better or worse than perhaps Rightmove's or anybody else's, I don't know. But what I would say is that if you've got the likes of Jitty, for example, over here in the UK, which is a small startup, what they have been able to do is to and again, it's worth just having a look because their site is great. It doesn't quite have the volume of properties, but you can search on pink bath, or you can search on crazy staircases, and what they have done is they have got an AI that their own tuned AI to actually go and describe using photos what the property is like. So and this I think is again the beauty of AI, and one of the reasons why it's not really an excuse, right? These guys have got however much money, and if Jitty with their limited resources can go and do this, yes, on a slightly less volume basis, but certainly technically it is entirely possible. Certainly if you are earning 70% margin, then you could perhaps put a little tiny bit amount of that towards being able to build this thing across your entire network, which again kind of suggests there's another reason for not doing it. But yes, I don't entirely buy the argument that the data quality and consistency is a reason why this hasn't happened, because I think again, Chitty and others have proven that all you really need is some smarts and a tech team that's able to train a large language model to go and look at all these images, describe them, see the CVU, and then even if the CVU isn't in the description, it knows there's a CVU. It knows there's a parking space. In due course as well, it knows the postcode of that particular property, so it knows it's like a 10-minute walk to the train station, even if it's not in the actual description itself. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a kind of a shield. Chocolate shield, is that the phrase?
I know. For what it's worth, I do happen to completely agree with you on that one. I had to ask it. Okay, we can't put it off any longer. Why are these real estate portals not introducing AI search? We've established that they are the technology is there and it has been there for a while. We've established that users are increasingly going that way and are going to expect this kind of capability. What are the reasons? I mean, I've put out a presentation on what I think the reasons are. You've worked in the portal industry, you know the attitudes of some of these people. What's your take on it?
Yeah, look, really fair question. So I'm going to try and do balance, okay? Because like you, I kind of don't want to just kind of tear into to some of the challenges. I do think
Yeah,
there.
bear in mind that most of the people listening to this will be portals.
And that's fair enough, and I get that. But and that isn't the reason why I'm also coming in from the other end as well. But I do get the idea that data quality it can potentially be an issue, but there are solutions to that, and the solution is get your AI trained up better. There are questions around model reliability, so I do get as well. Actually, if I use a large language model and it doesn't come back with the answers that I expect, or perhaps there's some hallucinations which are disappearing, but perhaps might be a fear thing. Then you're still practicing and training in the background and you're ready to reveal it as soon as those hallucinations disappear. Maybe that's happening. Maybe all of them are just on the cusp of about to launch it. And that's there. I don't really buy that there's a technical challenges. I think that those are relatively easily overcome. Obviously many of them can afford the best AI talents that are out there as well. So for me, it does really come down to this monetization. All right. And here it comes, essentially. And I think when we were chatting before, we were talking about, that milking the cash cow, if it is the case that this model is essentially just churning cash out and is basically just floating it all over everybody, shareholders, people who are working in the business, then everybody has got an incentive not to break it, right? Don't kill the golden goose. So it feels to me that and let me explain how not doing this benefits portals, because if you change your search to a natural language search where I can find my sea view 3-bedroom with a parking space near the train station very quickly, then all of the portal's premium listings, those featured properties, the additional interstitial pages that you have to kind of click through to put in some extra search, gubbins, all of those pages are just skipped, and you just go straight to the listing, and that means that all of the profitable pixels that come from having these extra featured properties and these extra interstitial pages, all of that just evaporates. And then the agents just sit there and go, well, why am I paying for this optimizer package, optimizer edge, when actually I'm not getting any material benefit for it? People are skipping past them and just going straight into the listing. So it is a huge um, uh, way of depressing that desire or that drive. It absolutely makes it almost nonsensical for these portals to put in natural language search too early, because then the arguments start, the monetization issues are challenged, the price increases that may be possible in 2026, 2027, 2028 evaporate, and yeah, you're then you're sitting in front of the investors at your shareholder meeting, and they're all throwing things at you and arguing that you've blown it up. So I think the fact that it is 1% or less than 1%, I think is in large part driven by the fact that there is an absolute rock solid reason, and some might argue, and I'm sure again people listening to this might, that their fiduciary duty is that they don't go down this route too early, because actually, this is a shareholder, focused business, and this is too important. But I think that that causes a challenge for them as well, and I think it is a challenge they're storing up until further down the line, which is if people use the conduit into this ecosystem of property search and property discovery, and they're using a different entry point, whether that's again ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, then it is going to be difficult for a Rightmove, an REA, to then re-establish themselves as that first port of call, that the place that people go at the outset. And I think that also then plays in to further down the piece, which is that they're also challenged by, do they allow their properties to be surfaced by the chat GPTs and the Claudes? Because again, that's like creating a meta portal above all of them. And that again almost disintermediates their brand.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. So there is part of me that sympathizes quite a bit with the portals and thinks actually there's no kind of obvious monetary upside to adopting AI search, right? And if you really think about it, okay, yes, there is obviously a very big upswing at the moment of AI search adoption among consumers, but not necessarily vertical search. So I'm thinking of things like, I don't think I've ever seen an AI search on like a takeaway app. I don't think there are many on car apps. I don't think there are particularly any on kind of travel apps still. So I can kind of see it from the portal's point of view to an extent. However, like you'll know better than me when eventually we will reach a point where consumers will expect it. Does the problem then become knowing I imagine most of these portals are experimenting with this stuff already. Does it just become a question of when to deploy it? Surely there's going to be a perfect point where deploying it, you won't deploy it too early or too late, right?
Yeah, the kind of Goldilocks deployment moments, right? Yeah, look, I'm sure that there are strategies that have been drawn up and are being refined right now in all of the portals about when that moment comes, because again, the technology is there. It is being used by a vast swathe of the population already, and it is something that is going to become increasingly common and increasingly desired and demanded. I do go back to the print versus digital kind of argument, and yes, there is that kind of sweet spot, that Goldilocks moment, but actually, that you can be too late, right? And it's gone gold, or you can come in too hot. Um, and I think that's the real risk, and because these, so print, what they did in the early 2000s was, all the big publishing companies, they said, look, we've done the internet because we've got a website. Right. So, and that was it. They just spun the content off their newspapers and put it up on the website and said, we've done the internet. But actually aggregation was the thing, actually that convenience for customers was the thing. And that's why they all the consumers drifted towards the portals, which then the media companies had to go and buy for many zillions of pounds in the end anyway. So I think that this now is moving in a similar direction. I think that there will be this moment where essentially you can't pick that right moment, I don't think. And here's why. I think that just like having a page in the back of a newspaper with 9 properties on it, and people looking at that, and then actually suddenly being able to go to Rightmove and see every property that you want to see, is a wholly different experience. The AI search and AI discovery and AI interactivity is a whole different world to even aggregation on the portals, and experience on the portals and so on. So I think that then that there is going to have to be some adoption. I think that the ones that actually go with where the consumers are going quickly, and I think about the challenger brands perhaps more than the dominants. I think the ones that are up and coming, the ones that want to make a difference, I've always got a kind of weather eye on CoStar and what they're doing in the Matterport stuff. Is the enriched actual property listing. Actually, if I can go on and then I can mess about with a Matterport 3D doll's house thing, is that going to be the thing that keeps me on a CoStar page rather than going off onto Zillow or anywhere else. So that I think is interesting. So I think it's going to come down to essentially, um, can you give the consumer enough when they get to your site that they love you enough and they will stay on you, and then perhaps in the end they will look out for you and search for you. And when they're asking ChatGPT, say, oh, by the way, I want to go to Domain, or I want to go to On the Market, or I want to go to homes.com. Preferably if this property, show me all those properties first. That's the kind of thing that I would be thinking if I was a portal right now, is how do I make sure that the experience when consumers get to me is like incredible? And I think that's where Andy Florence and CoStar have been really smart and matable. But I do think that the kind of cleft stick that the portals are in, and particularly dominant ones, is going too early means a significant loss of revenue and share price and all that sort of stuff. Going too late means that you've completely missed that boat. And I think that the window of that Goldilocks moment is so narrow, um, and it requires you to have done all this other stuff as well, i.e., made the experience on your site so brilliant that people are telling ChatGPT and AI that they want to go to you first. And I think that's the thing that I would be focusing on more than anything else, is making sure the experience on the site is so good that people are going to want to ask for me, and also making sure that I am discoverable so easily by AI. And that means everything is so clean, indexed, the data is so readily available that AI can just scoop it up and sweep it in. And it will mean that if this one property is available on your site and on the agent's site and on a competitor portal, then yours comes up top because it's so much cleaner for the AI to find, and it will like it much better.
Okay. Kind of similarly to what you were saying there, about consumer experience, and you have to make sure that your experience is the best one. There's one example of a real estate. Actually, I hesitate to say portal because it's not strictly speaking a portal, but one real estate marketplace website that I came across, which is, in my opinion, markedly different from the others that uses AI search. So Fly Homes in the US is not strictly speaking a portal. It's one of these businesses that has all of the listings because of, how the US market works, and you can just get all the listings. I think they make their money from financial services, but what's interesting about their product is that it's kind of AI first. They don't have the AI search box alongside the kind of traditional search box, which some of these portals do at the moment. But really interestingly as well is, once you've put in your search, you don't go to a search results page. You go to a chat interface with, once you put in the search, it will say, do you want to see a search results page, or do you want to just see the listings? Now, this is kind of a revolution if you think about it, because real estate portals, they make money from the results pages. They don't really they kind of make money from the listings pages, but mostly they make money from showing one listing above another listing, unless they are like a lot of the ones in the US. They charge for leads rather than visibility. So my question to you is, for me, this is kind of a revolutionary user experience for a real estate marketplace. Not having a search results page, or at least not prioritizing a search results page. That's the kind of user experience that users get at the moment with things like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. Do you see that as kind of the way real estate portals might end up going, or is it such a kind of revolution and so against the business model that we probably won't see it?
So I think, going back to when we were setting up Zoopla, one of the things we always had in our minds was never more than 3 clicks to the target, to wherever a consumer wanted to go, because each of those friction points, you would lose, say, 10% of traffic. People would get distracted, the doorbell would go, the dog would start barking, whatever. So the less you had to get in the way before they got to where they wanted to go, the better. Now, I think that over time, obviously with monetization, that actually there's been an increased willingness and perhaps desire amongst many perhaps dominant portals to put additional friction points in there, because that again is chargeable and monetizable and so on. So I agree with you. I think that the quicker people are going to get used to let's call it the chat GPT experience, the AI experience, which is basically, it's one shot. I ask a question and I get provided with an answer, and that's the answer. And I can go and then look at what that answer is. And that one shot response, I think, is what everybody's going to start to expect. And if you are putting in the way, again, pointless interstitial pages, asking for clarification around search criteria, or additional feature properties that aren't relevant to what I know that if I go to ChatGPT, I'll just get the answer. So why would I go to a portal and then have to fish through all these things that you want to tell me, but I don't necessarily want to see? So I think you're right. I think that this is going to be the future. Is going to be much more one click, one shot search, discovery, finding that thing, going onto it. Now there are risks in that, and talking to agents I do every day, their concern is people don't know what they want. I might say I want to sit a 3-bedroom property with a TV, blah, 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 but actually I will end up buying a 4-bedroom place, around the corner with no sea view, but it's really nice for nature. So I think there's going to be a really interesting play in there where AIs are going to get much smarter at saying, right, okay, this is what you've asked for, but also what I know about you as well is you've got the dog, and actually you like to go on holidays, blah blah blah. So you need to be near an airport or whatever. Then actually is going to suggest, just like an agent would, a good agent would, some other alternatives that might be more in the keeping of the particular lifestyle of the searcher as well. But broadly speaking, your point is absolutely right. People are going to expect to get to where they want to go really, really quickly, and anything else, anything that puts things in the way, is going to start to find itself obsolete.
Okay, to your point there of what agents say is that actually house hunters don't necessarily know what they want. I tend to agree with that. Is there a point that says, actually, if you are a real estate portal and you're suddenly massively broadening the kind of scope of different parameters that a user can search with by introducing AI powered search, do you have to then do some kind of education to tell the user, actually, now you can put in south facing garden near an airport, whatever? Like, we've conditioned users over the last 25 years to just use postcode, number of bedrooms, house type, etc. Does there need to be an education piece of like, actually, you know what, you can search with, these are things that people like to search with. Why don't you use them in your search?
I think that will probably be that, again, there'll probably be a window where that might be useful, but I don't think it's going to be essential. I think, again, the kind of chat GPTization of discovery means that people are going to be quite happy. Just they call it kind of vibe coding, or vibe searching, right?
Vibe searching, right? Okay.
Vibe searching, where you're just going to try it, not quite get what you want, and then go, actually, right, instead of that, forget that bit, go somewhere else. So I think vibe searching, if we're just going to coin it that, is going to be a thing where, and also, people are used to typing in, and dropping down filters and all that sort of stuff. The interface that we're going to be searching with is voice. So actually that's a whole different way of doing things anyway. So I think we're going to become so accepting of the fact that we're asking and talking to an AI to talk about properties we like, that actually the absence of filters and other things isn't going to feel quite as much of a wrench as it might otherwise be. Because I think people, I think that the fact is that people speak 3 times faster than they type. So on average, so actually this, again, talking about friction, talking into your phone and asking it, or talking into your screen and asking it, is going to be far quicker than typing it. So I think we're going to move away very quickly from that filtering, hands-on, typey process.
Okay, Mal, we'll leave it there. But thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you very much for. I always appreciate people like speculating about the future, because it's one of those things that's obviously incredibly difficult to do. And I don't want to say it can make you look foolish, because people probably aren't going to come back to this in 10 years and go,
We'll see.
what did he say here? But it is one of the harder things to do, I think, in an interview. So thank you for your time and your thoughts.
Of course, listen, thanks for creating the report as well. Massively geeked out on it. If yeah, you need to read it. It's so good. So thank you for doing all that, mate. Really good.